It's been over 2 years since I found this, a gorgeous mid-century modern solid mahogany dresser, and I only paid $10 for it. I've been using it as my dresser ever since, but the splitting of the wood was getting worse and worse, so I decided it was time for a facelift. I started the repair by squirting some wood glue into the cracks and laid the dresser on its back so gravity would be on my side. I unfortunately didn't have large enough wood clamps, so I used dumbbells instead, which actually worked really well. Once the glue dried, I sanded off the old finish, which was basically non-existent, and then it was time for the fun part, the 3-step staining process. My first step was to apply pre-stained wood conditioner by Minwax to prevent any blotching or streaking. After 15 minutes, I wiped off any excess and applied 1 coat of Early American by Minwax. It's their wood finish oil-based penetrating stain, and it went on beautifully. And now it's time for the last step, sealing it all up with Minwax oil-based fast-drying polyurethane. I absolutely love this stuff because of the durability and how easy it is to apply. For a flawless finish, I always sand lightly with a really fine grit sandpaper before applying the last coat. Now just a reminder, here's the before and here's the after. I absolutely love how much depth the stain added to this piece. You would never even know that there was a crack in the wood with how well the repair took. Safe to say I'm obsessed, and I'm definitely not going to be selling this one. Here's how I ruined this $4,000 Haywood Wakefield vanity. I bought this vanity off of Facebook Marketplace for $200. Haywood Wakefield furniture is extremely expensive because it's made of solid birch. I scraped, sanded, and did about 10 rounds of wood bleach, which only helped a little bit. Haywood Wakefield stains are very hard to replicate, but after a bit of research, I decided to go with Old Masters gel stain in the color fruitwood. I was really nervous about this because birch never absorbs stain well, and sure enough, it came out awful. I felt like I got punched in the gut with this one. I walked away from this project for a whole 2 months, and then I finally got the courage and I decided to fix those discolorations with Mohawk Blend-All sticks. Thankfully, there was a color that matched almost perfectly, so it was really easy to repair those areas. I sealed everything with Easy Vinyl Sealer and then gave several coats of satin lacquer. And after several long months, I finally brought this vanity from this to this. It's by no means perfect, and my resale price will reflect that. I paid $250 for 7 days of pain, and I wish I was joking. I'm not sure why I did this to myself, but I just felt the urge to save this piece even though it was outrageously priced. I started off by applying a chemical stripper, which got a bulk of the paint off. I could already see that I was going to have an issue with paint residue stuck in the grain, which is why I always hesitate to take on fully painted pieces. I continued on by sanding off what I could with 120 grit and then 180 grit. For the little legs, I used a carbide scraper, and I tried to level out the previous repairs and any other veneer chips with colored Mohawk epoxy. I then spent over 6 hours straight scrubbing every inch of this piece with a wire brush and some lacquer thinner to remove the paint out of the grain. I'm not kidding when I tell you this left blisters. Now, I don't normally stain walnut, but I decided to apply a gel stain just in case I missed any paint. I was definitely questioning my decision when I saw the jello-like texture of this stain, but honestly, the result was fabulous. I was then able to use my veneer paint kit to color match the repairs I made and the repairs the previous owner made. Getting that combo right also took forever, but it was totally worth it. Lastly, I applied several coats of a wipe-on poly. Now here's the very scary before and here's the after. I'm actually really happy with the result, but wow, this was not a fun one at all. I've already accepted that I'm going to take a major loss on this one considering the original price and the labor I put into it, but oh well, I saved a piece of furniture. 2 years ago, I found $3,000 at a garage sale, and I've been holding on to it ever since. And by $3,000, I mean a rare, highly sought after Broyhill Brazilia bar cart. I cleaned it well and used painter's tape to protect the tile. Then it was time to carefully sand off the virtually non-existent finish. I tried my best attempts at removing watermarks with oxalic acid, which got rid of a bulk of the stain, but not everything. I applied a medium brown walnut wiping stain, which went on beautifully, and I used this stain for all of my Brazilia pieces. I sprayed a coat of vinyl sealer, and once it dried, I applied a raw umber glaze. When I apply this glaze, I like to let it sit until it's almost dry and then wipe off any excess in the direction of the grain. Now for the tedious part, the repairs. I used a combination of Mohawk Blend-All sticks and veneer paint to touch up and conceal the water stains. Those repairs were all then sealed up with some more vinyl sealer, and then I finally made it to my last step, top coat. To match the original sheen, I used a classic satin lacquer. Now as a reminder, here's the before and here's the after. What do you think? I'm obviously obsessed, and I will never let this one go. I thought I won the lottery, but it turns out I just got scammed. When I saw these Merin Gersan American and Martinsville nightstands listed for free, I thought I struck gold. I knew the blue paint would be a real pain to get off, but if it's free, it's for me. I got straight to stripping, and wow, was it a satisfying strip, no pun intended. Look how that paint was sliding right off. I actually thought to myself, this actually might not be so bad, but I immediately immediately revoked that thought once I got to the fluted drawers. I stripped, I scraped, I scrubbed. Each drawer took me a week because not only were they fluted for a faux bamboo look, but they also had a bajillion decorative wormhole things on the fluting. I used a sharp tip screwdriver to remove the paint from each one. I felt like Dr. Pimple Popper. This part was fun and satisfying for like a total of 3 seconds. After a full month of removing the paint, I was finally able to sand and get started on repairing the veneer with epoxy putty. I attempted to remove some of the dark stains with several rounds of oxalic acid, but unfortunately I didn't have much success, but I still continued on. I sanded everything down with 120 grit, working my way up to 180. I couldn't believe it. I was finally getting to the end stages of this flip, or so I thought. I applied an oil-based conditioner and then it was finally time for stain. I went with a walnut gel stain in hopes that it would cover some of the remaining dark marks, and as you can see, that was an immediate mistake. Now here's where we started and here's where we are now. So I need your help on what to do next because I've already spent 2 months working on these. I'd like to avoid paint, but that might be my only option. I've spent the last 2.5 months of my life working on these rare Merin Gersan nightstands that I got for free, only for them to turn out like this. They're giving pretzel rods. So most of you told me to paint them, but I just couldn't give up that easily. So to start fresh, I sanded everything down and wiped off any dust with mineral spirits. Because naturally, I decided to dig myself into an even bigger financial hole by going the veneer route. So I cut the veneer sheets to size and I peeled off the sticker backing and I secured it onto the nightstands with a brayer tool. I trimmed most of the excess off with electric scissors and then I refined it all with a utility knife. I'm actually really happy that I went with adhesive backed veneer versus having to apply contact cement. Even though it was a bit more expensive, it was just a lot easier. And I unfortunately did not have any walnut banded veneer on hand, so I had to create my own, but this part was actually the easiest. Then came the pretzel rod drawer fronts. I decided the only way to save them was with black paint. So my plan was to see how the wormholes looked after a few coats and then reevaluate the texture to see if I still needed to fill them in. My last step was to apply some oil polyurethane. Now remember, here's where we started, here's where I had my mental breakdown, and here's the final result. In total, I spent about $200 in supplies and an unknown ridiculous amount of hours working on these, and I'm still not sure if I even like the way that they turned out. Some may see a desk, but I see dollar signs. I immediately recognized the solid maple Crawford desk and I bought it for $60. I started by cleaning the piece to get a better idea of what I was working with. I used 120 grit to remove any of the old finish, which thankfully came off pretty easily, but sanding did not help remove the dark stain on the top of the desk at all. I did try a few rounds of oxalic acid, which didn't work, neither did a hot iron, so I decided to just go ahead and apply some oil-based preconditioner and then a coat of fruitwood gel stain. I was honestly really stumped about the dark stains and I knew my typical wax crayons wouldn't cut it, so I went back to the basics, color theory. I usually use an orange-red pigment under my concealer to hide dark marks, so I figured if that color correction works on my skin, it should work on wood too, right? Girl math. I got to the closest color match that I could, and then I added some graining details. I sealed it all up with a few coats of some semi-gloss lacquer. Now, here's the before and here's the after. While it's not perfect, it was definitely a learning experience. I guess it's time to practice my inline painting skills. I found this dusty old dresser at an estate sale for $80. When I got home, I realized it was a Drexel Paragon, which can sell for a pretty penny. This piece had thick varnish, so I used Gator Platinum 5-inch sanding discs in 120 grit since they resist tearing and edge wear. I then began to work my way up to 220 grit. Once I got most of the finish off, I used Gator Micro Zip all-purpose detail sanding block kit. Its ergonomic design allowed for comfort while allowing me to get into these hard-to-reach corners. I then applied Varathane Premium Fast Dry Wood Stain in the color Kona, which happened to be the perfect match to the original color of the dresser. This was amazing because the drawers were in good condition, so I never had to touch those. This stain dried so fast and had such a rich color that I only needed one coat. I then used Gator Hook and Loop Hand Block Kit with 180 grit to comfortably hand sand the surface to prep for my top coat, which is Varathane's water-based polyurethane in matte. As a reminder, here's the before and here's the after. This piece was brought back to its original condition and now has a beautiful crystal clear matte finish.